A dangerous rescue mission to Antarctica has been called heroic and flawless, but that doesn't mean it went smoothly.
3 people, one needing urgent medical care, were evacuated from the United States' main research outpost in Antarctica. New Zealand's Air Force conducted the high-risk mission in the Antarctic winter, which meant harsh weather and 24-hour darkness. The transport aircraft also had to land on a runway made of ice.
The U.S. Embassy in New Zealand says this mission wasn't just difficult, it was one of the most technically demanding operations an aircrew can face.
Just 2 hours into the nearly 20-hour, 3,900-kilometre life-saving flight, the New Zealand Defence Force crew on board the Hercules C-130J-30 hit its first snag. Bad weather threw a crucial part of its flight plan, the point of safe return, into disarray. No South Island runways were safe for the plane to divert to if it had to turn back in an emergency.
So normally we pick an aerodrome that is closer to Antarctica so we get the maximum range. So normally we try Invercargill or Dunedin, but on this day the forecast was that there was going to be freezing fog at both of these airports, and we had originally planned it as Christchurch being our divert, and we took off and we got the new forecast weather from Met Service New Zealand, and they were then also reporting low cloud at Christchurch.
But then next on the list, Wellington, another snag.
They had the runway closed.
That problem was sorted, but so much more could have gone wrong.
Any number of things. We talk about almost a perfect triangle of you need the aircraft to play the game, the weather, and the 7.5 hours between launching from New Zealand and making it to McMurdo. The weather could have deteriorated. The biggest risk and the most concerning risk for us is once we're through our point of safe return, which is where we're committed to landing in Antarctica, that the weather deteriorates. There's a multitude of other things that could go wrong in getting there.
So what really happened on that treacherous flight in complete darkness? I'm Sharon Brett-Kelly, and today on The Detail, I'm at Whenuapai Air Base in Auckland with 2 of the reluctant heroes talking for the first time of the daring evacuation of 3 American researchers from Antarctica. Co-pilot Flight Lieutenant Ben Pickering and the Hercules flight commander at 40 Squadron, Adam Palmer, who planned and led the mission on the ground. Adam takes us back to that first call for help.
We were basically told initially that there was an individual who needed to be evacuated from the ice. To go in winter, it's a pretty significant event. Kind of needs to meet a high threshold, I suppose, for approval to get that person off the ice. So we weren't really told too much. The medical team were in contact with the United States Antarctic Program medical team, so they knew a little bit about the patient. We knew that we just had to go down and bring a patient off at that stage.
But you found out about it on the Friday. The plane didn't leave Christchurch until the Tuesday.
Yeah, so there were a few things involved in that decision and that timeline. One, the runway at McMurdo needed to be prepared and be suitable for us to land on it. Because it's winter at the moment, they haven't maintained the runway to the standard they normally would during the summer season.
What does that involve, preparing the runway?
Clearing any excess snow off it, grooming it, compacting it, making it smooth enough for us to land on. Down there, it's about a 10,000-foot runway that they need to clear. So a fairly significant length of snow and ice.
You weren't actually going to fly down to Antarctica. You were really in charge of logistics. So what were the first things that you had to do?
Yeah, so I went down as the detachment commander and authorising officer for this evacuation. So my role was to look after the overall team and make sure they were in a position to launch whenever we had the suitable window. So making sure that we had accommodation, the aircraft, we were all prepped, and then we had conversations with the forecasters about when's the next suitable weather window on that and over the next sort of 2 or 3 days to be able to target having the crew ready to respond when we did.
So the weather had to be right. On the other hand, if you're doing a flight like this midwinter, it must be kind of a life and death situation, is it?
Yeah, there's definitely the patient's welfare that needs to be weighed up against the risk we're going to put ourselves in to go down there in the middle of winter. So the air component commander was definitely getting those updates and making sure we were in a position to go, but also that the need of the patient was still high enough that he was willing to authorise us to head south. We aren't going to put ourselves in a position that puts us at risk, but it's definitely there in the back of our mind of there's a person here who needs to be evacuated and seriously unwell at this stage.
Ben, when did you first find out that you were going on this mission?
I was actually on post-flight crew rest from a previous trip that I was on, and I got a phone call, and I saw it was Squadron Leader Palmer. I was like, oh. And yeah, picked up the phone, and he was like, what are you doing this weekend? There's an ice rescue that needs to go. Would you like to be a part of the crew, or can you be a part of the crew? And I was like, yep, sure. From there, yeah, it was just pretty much straight into prepping everything that was required.
What is prepping?
Well, for the co-pilots, it's mostly about making sure all the required paperwork is sorted. So we run our fuel plans as far in advance as we can with historic winds, and we formulate a range control chart. Pretty much plots where we think our point of safe return is going to be. So we kind of make a draft version of that so that when we get down to Christchurch and we've got the real weather, the real weights, the real fuels, we can just plug in the new numbers and get an accurate figure for the day.
Tell me about this point of safe return, because that's so crucial in the whole flight, isn't it?
It's literally the point we have just enough gas to turn around and go to our en route divert, and we had originally planned it as Christchurch, and we took off, and that was the plan. We got the new forecast weather from Met Service New Zealand. They were then also reporting low cloud at Christchurch. So fortunately, we take two co-pilots. One acts as the person airborne who monitors fuel trends and where our point of safe return is, so they could dedicate their time to replanning where this point's going to be in time and space back to Wellington, because their weather was suitable.
So was it just after takeoff that you found out that it was going to have to be Wellington? If you needed to turn back, it would be Wellington?
Yeah, so it was a couple hours into the flight that we got the new weather, and it resulted in some phone calls to both Wellington to make sure they'd be happy to accept us, because they had the runway closed but could be activated within 30 minutes for emergency aircraft. So we had to call them and say, can we use your runway? And they said yes.
Was it the middle of the night? Why was the runway closed in Wellington?
They're actually just doing maintenance on the runway, from my understanding.
You kind of were really limited on the places that you could turn back to land.
Yeah, exactly. You know, when the planning goes smoothly and it is Dunedin or Invercargill, then there's no surprises. It's a little bit easier than when you have to make these decisions airborne and do the replanning.
Back in Christchurch, Adam was closely watching developments on his laptop and took a call from the flight deck.
The team called me a couple of times through the flight. The first one was mainly to discuss the change in that point of safe return airfield and having to now hold Wellington, and the fact that that gap had now increased to what we'd already pre-briefed and authorised before they left Christchurch. So to discuss that, and then to confirm that we were happy to continue south with that increased risk and that increased gap there.
So Wellington was going to be the airport that you would land if you had to turn around. At what point on that journey down there is the point of no return?
So it changes depending on the weather at the time, what the winds are doing aloft, but it can range from, on a really good day, if you have a light aircraft and lots of fuel, it could be as close as an hour 15 from landing or from the continent. And on a bad day, it could be 2.5 hours.
So you're a long way down before you could even say we can't land.
That's right, yeah. But in the lead up to this decision point, we're getting weather every single hour from Phoenix Airfield. And then 2 hours prior to our point of no return, we are getting weather every 30 minutes. So we're building a trend to make sure that as we come to this decision point, we have credible evidence that the weather is as forecast.
How much was the weather forecast changing while you were up in the air, while you were heading down there?
Initially, there were reports that there was going to be snow and big reductions in visibility. Fortunately, they never eventuated, and the forecast eventually changed to say that the conditions were better.
And what was going through? I mean, are you just so entirely focused on this flight and reading the weather forecast and doing your job? There's no room for you to think, oh my goodness, this is a life and death situation, and my own life could be at risk here.
Not really. We're pretty invested in what we're doing in the plane, our roles, and for none of us, it was our first time doing a Antarctica flight. The only added difficulty was that it was at night on night vision goggles. So I guess part of it is that we are already comfortable with the process of flying to Antarctica. We just have to consider these extra little bits. Yeah.
And what's that like, to be wearing them as your...
Night vision goggles.
Yeah.
The difference between just seeing in the day and wearing night vision goggles is quite huge. Like, you're looking through pretty much paper towel tubes. You don't have your peripheral vision anymore. It just illuminates a small field of view in front of each of your eyes, and it doesn't turn night into day. It just creates greater situational awareness. You get a good contrast between terrain, sky, terrain features, and that sort of stuff, but it's definitely not like it's daytime now.
No, well it was, and it's not daytime anyway, is it?
No.
It's all dark.
It's completely pitch black.
But can you see the stars? Can you see clouds?
Yep. One of the benefits of night vision goggles is if the cloud is thin enough, you can see through it. But it'll make any light source much more apparent. So if you look at the stars, instead of seeing 100 stars, you can see thousands. Yeah, any artificial lighting on the ground suddenly becomes extremely bright.
So if there's a ship...
another aircraft in the sky, Scott Base is actually incredibly bright under night vision goggles.
How many hours into this nearly 20-hour trip was it before you were coming in to land at McMurdo Sound, wasn't it? At
Yeah,
McMurdo
correct.
Base?
The flight time itself from Christchurch to full stop landing into Phoenix Airfield was 7 hours 30 minutes, and top of descent was about 30 to 40 minutes just before touchdown.
Tell me about what was going on then. You got to the top of drop. Is this the most tense time of the whole flight?
So I guess it probably starts back at PSR, point of safe return. So once we go through that point, we're committed to Antarctica. So the priority is making sure that we get to Phoenix in as short a time as possible so that there's not a huge chance for the weather to deteriorate if it's going to, unforecast.
So you're speeding up the
So we
plane.
We descend down to a low altitude, we put the power levers forward, we go faster to get there as quickly as possible. And then from there, the pilot flying, who's the captain in this instance, went through his normal arrival brief, and then just before top of descent, we both put our helmets on, put our goggles on, and made sure we were all comfortable in the seat with our equipment. And then from that point, we went into just talking about work, just doing the job to land the plane.
Did you have turbulence?
No. It was actually a very smooth descent, and fortunately the weather obviously played the game. So there wasn't too many difficult decisions that we had to make that hadn't already been discussed beforehand.
What did you see as you were coming in then? Can you describe?
So the pilot and I were focused on the descent profile of the aircraft, the speed, that sort of stuff, and it was actually the third pilot who was sitting behind us in the jump seat, who was also on goggles, who said, I think I can start to see the runway under the goggles coming into view. And sure enough, there was the runway lighting. So we had visual reference to the runway for quite some time, maybe 5 minutes, and we just watched it get bigger and bigger.
Are there mountains around it?
Yeah, so it's in the actual runway itself is on the sea ice in the Sound, and then to the left on the approach path that you come in is Erebus, which is obviously a pretty notorious hill. And then to the right-hand side is a big mountain range as well.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, carry on. You
So yeah, we're coming down, and fortunately the visibility was really good. The aerodrome lighting was really good. So because it was so bright, we elected to put our goggles up so we could use just unaided vision to conduct the final parts of the approach. And that's just because when cultural lighting is in close proximity and is really bright, it makes the night vision goggles bloom. So it can be quite distracting.
Okay, so you took your goggles off and you were doing it by sight because it was so well lit.
Yeah, that also has its own issues though, because when you take the goggles off, suddenly there is no terrain definition. So you get this effect called the black hole effect, where if you can imagine the outline of a runway lit up and there's just absolutely nothing around it except for darkness, it just kind of feels like you're floating in space. And it can cause some optical illusions where you feel like you're low. And so we had to really rely on the instruments to make sure the angle of our approach was correct for the landing.
Must be incredibly tense.
I think we try to have a professionally relaxed environment to not create unnecessary tension, but the pilot was definitely working hard to fly an accurate approach, and my main job was to back him up. So, if there were any deviations in flight path or airspeed, I was calling them out and making sure that corrections were made in a timely manner, because the idea of going around a missed approach was definitely less desirable than a perfect landing the first time.
But you did a perfect landing?
Well, your sledge did a good landing.
You wouldn't like to admit that it was perfect.
It was good landing.
Good landing. What would you say, Adam?
Oh, I wasn't there, so I'll take Ben's word for it.
So when they landed, how did you feel? Was it relief? What was it?
I was pretty happy to see them on the ground and to see them safely there, but that was, I suppose, only half the job done. We still needed to refuel the aircraft and then safely get off the ice.
But up to that point, from your point of view, was it a flawless flight?
Yeah, I suppose with the challenges of what we had in terms of the time we launched, the weather in New Zealand, it had gone pretty well. But yeah, we still had a pretty significant couple of pieces to achieve.
Yeah, and those significant pieces, Ben, so you landed, then you had to do something like, is it hot refuelling? Is that what you call it?
Yeah, hot refueling. We taxi in, we keep the engines running, and we have a load master go out and talk to the refueler. They grab the line, connect it to the aircraft, and from there we're taking gas on board whilst all 4 engines are running.
Meanwhile, the doctor has gone to get the 3 American science researchers.
Yeah, once we got on the ground, that's where the real work started. For the load masters, that was the risky time for them. They're out in minus 30 degrees for 40 minutes.
What could go wrong apart from the fact that it's extremely cold?
Yeah, so anytime you've got big hot engines running at the same time as flammable gas going onto the aircraft, there's risk of fire, there's risk of fuel leaks, and when fuel gets on your person in already minus 30 degrees, when it evaporates, it creates a cooling effect as well, so the risk of frostbite and that sort of stuff is heightened. So these are all things we'd already talked about, pre-briefed what we were going to do if any of these became a reality, but it was still a risky time, or riskier time, for the load masters. And then, the doctors also had to brave the minus 30 to go and get a debrief from the medical staff at the airfield, then transport the patient onto the aircraft, get them set up, comfortable, etc. I think it was helped by the fact that all of the ground crew were so gripped, they were ready to do the handover. So our time on the ground was kept to a minimum, which is obviously very important for us because we want to turn around and get out of there as soon as possible in case the weather changes, in case anything happens to the aircraft. So they did a really excellent job.
So how long were you on the ground for?
We were there for 80 minutes, which for a hot refuel and passenger handover is really fast.
And what are you doing during that whole period of time?
So the captain and I were up the front in our seats, and we sat there for the whole time monitoring the refuel. So we've got the refuel panel on the flight deck, which has our quantities and pressures and such. So we are monitoring that, setting it up for the refuel. And then after the refuel was complete, we still had to load our route home, brief the departure, and And yeah,
So you're not kind of sitting back having a cup of tea, are you?
definitely not. It was all go on the ground.
And fairly smooth flight home?
Yeah, it was really good. This was obviously coming into the point where we're in the deepest part of the night, so everyone had to manage their fatigue. Everyone went and took some crew rest, and we were cycling people through the flight deck to make sure that everyone was rested for the return to Christchurch.
So we're lucky enough to be actually going on board the what's the full name of it?
C-130J-30, and it's the Super Hercules.
Why is it called the Super Hercules?
Because it's an upgrade version of the H model, I guess. It's got new engines, it's got new avionics. It's better.
Will I follow you? You're going to
Yeah.
show me up. We're going up the stairs. Oh, up one set of stairs and we're on the flight deck. Okay, and where did you sit, Ben, for this trip?
I was in the right seat. This is the co-pilot's chair, and then the left seat is for the captain. And in this third seat, behind the centre console, we had one of our experienced flight instructors on board as an extra set of eyes.
You pretty much were working pretty close to, 20 hours?
Yep. Yeah.
Non-stop?
20 hours non-stop. We had a rest period in the middle there, which recharged us, but it was a long time. But we definitely looked after with lots of food and water and that sort of thing by the loadmasters.
You were in the back there, or where do you go for your rest?
We got lots of options in the Hercs. We got so much space. So yeah, on the flight deck we've got the upper command post, as it's known, but it's a bunk at the back of the flight deck for sleeping. And then down the back, the loadmasters tend to set up stretchers with pillows and blankets and such, so we can have quality rest.
So how long were you having your rest for?
I managed to get 2 hours of sleep, which was pretty good.
Wow, 2 hours out of nearly 20. Gosh.
Yeah, we have specific requirements for controlled rest in terms of how long it takes you to go to sleep, have a good enough rest period, and then wake up. And then there's a period where, you're readjusting to the real world after being asleep. And we have, fatigue management software as well that we can use to track this sort of stuff to see how, the average human is reacting to being awake at those times and how they're going to perform.
It's been called heroic. I'm sure you've heard that. But what is it like to sort of come back down from something like that?
It was definitely quite a lot of adrenaline still going. We landed at 8 a.m. and then we're pretty much straight back to the hotel, but I don't think many of us actually then went to sleep. But it's definitely nice to come back and be able to talk to people who have done this in the past and have a shared experience. It's definitely awesome to be a part of something as significant as this. And I think for me, it really became apparent when you see the pictures of us landing from the outside onto the runway. And, it would be a pretty significant moment if you needed to leave Antarctica, seeing a C-130 land ready to pick you up. So for me, that was pretty cool.
Is this the toughest thing you've had to do?
No, but...
Oh, what's the toughest?
Well, a lot of the flying we do in the tactical environment is incredibly stressful and incredibly high workload. Most of it's just in training. This would be the hardest real job that I've done.
What about you, Adam?
Yeah, probably the most stressful, high-risk operation I've had to authorise and oversee. But in saying that, at the same time, also massively rewarding for the team and for us to be able to go out and do that. Where we are now, having had the J for 11 months to now go and do this is awesome for the team, and for it to be such a success and such a smooth operation as well was great.
You got huge amounts of coverage in the US. I don't know if you know that. Does that matter to you?
The coverage piece, no. I suppose that's not really why we do the job. The cool part about being on 40 and flying Hercs or 75s is the chance to go out and help people.
That's it for today. The Detail is a newsroom production supported by RNZ and NZ On Air. Today's podcast was produced by Gwen McClure and Davina Zimmer and engineered by William Saunders. Thanks to Adam Palmer and Ben Pickering. I'm Sharon Brett Kelly. Mā te wā.